Full spectrum is one of the most misused and abused terms in the cannabis industry. And in this video, we're gonna break down what full spectrum should mean, how people are misusing it, when a full spectrum hemp or marijuana is actually really good, and then who full spectrum is for and who should steer clear of it. Okay, let's dive right in. The first thing and the most important thing is the fact that the term full spectrum is not defined. There is no regulatory body that says in order to utilize this to describe any product in the marijuana, hemp, cannabis industry as a whole, that you have to abide by these specific guidelines. There is none of that. So literally there are products out there that say that they are full spectrum, and even though the industry kind of has an idea of what we define full spectrum to be, people can use it and just totally defy what the industry as a whole even says what it is. So let's get started with our version and many others' version of what a full spectrum product is. So full spectrum basically means it is an extract of cannabis that best represents the plant in its entirety. So this means the best expression of cannabinoids, terpenes, and other aroma compounds that we know are present in the living plant. Now, of course, there are certain things that aren't going to be coming out in the extract, and depending on how it's processed, whether there's, lipids and waxes, there's not going to be chlorophyll and things like that. So we're basically looking at the cleanest extract possible that is the best representation of the active compounds like cannabinoids, terpenes, thiols, esters, alcohols, and some other things out there that we find in the plant. Now, whenever you take a plant and you extract anything from it, you're going to concentrate it. Now, in the cannabis world, that's fantastic. That's why you're able to get 60 to 90 some percent THC. But in the hemp world, it's a completely different ballgame because by law, you have to have less than 0.3% by weight or volume of Delta-9 THC. So finding what would be a true and effective version of a full spectrum hemp product are where most of the issues lie. So let's take a step back and talk about marijuana, cannabis, let's just call it high THC products, okay? It's really easy to find a full spectrum marijuana product with THC and some other cannabinoids and actually represent the plant that it was extracted from. And we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of what type of extraction method is best to, get that best representation, because there's a lot of great extraction methods. But at the end of the day, you're left with this concentrate product that will basically provide you with the best representation of the product and includes a really potent cannabinoid, which is THC. Now, whether that is put into an edible, a tincture, a vape pen, or is just dabbed as a concentrate, a little bit of THC goes a long way because of the strength of this compound in small amounts and how it affects our endocannabinoid system and other receptors outside of the ECS. Now, when we're talking about hemp extracts and what would be deemed full spectrum, the extract itself from a plant, by law, technically, should have less than 0.3% THC, but that's not the case. If you have a plant that is not reading high and you've got less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, which mind you does not include total THC or THCA. When you extract that, what happens is that plant that used to be totally good to go in the ground and is smokable flower now actually becomes hot until it's diluted in some type of carrier, say like MCT oil. Now this is where things get really interesting because CBD itself is a weak compound in comparison to THC. And a lot of the data shows that you need to take hundreds of milligrams of CBD for it to be effective. However, you only need 2.5 milligrams of THC for it to be measurably effective and therapeutic, whether you feel high, intoxicated, whatever you like to call it, or not. So you have this hemp plant that if you smoked it, might not get you high at all, unless you have a super low tolerance. Now you get the extract from that has that concentrated THC that is then decarbed or activated, and that, if you dab or if you were to vape, would most likely get a lot of people with a low to moderate tolerance. You know, they would feel high, they would feel some type of intoxication or calmness, so to speak, because of that little bit of THC. But now you take this full spectrum extract and you dilute it. Well, how you dilute it is really what kind of separates an effective full spectrum product from one that is basically placebo at best. So what could we consider an effective full spectrum product? Well, anything that's delivering a couple milligrams of delta-9 THC. And we can say this because we can look at all of the data like Sativex, which is legal in a couple dozen countries, which is roughly a 1-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD, delivering about 2.5 milligrams of THC to about 2.5 of CBD. There's a lot of data on Sativex, and we know that this ratio, and in these small amounts, that this is an effective combination of cannabinoids. So if you have a full spectrum hemp-based product, or any hemp-based product, whether they're defining it as full spectrum or their own blend of isolated compounds, if it's delivering a couple milligrams of THC per serving, then you definitely have an effective form of a full spectrum product. Now, what's interesting is that some people did the math and they realized that if you have a heavy product like a gummy that, say, weighs 4 or 5 grams, that you can deliver a significant amount of THC and still be under that 0.3% legal threshold. So right now you can buy gummies and other products that deliver 10 milligrams of active THC while at the same time delivering a significant amount of CBD. Now, although the high amount of CBD is going to minimize some of the psychoactive or intoxicating effects of that THC, if you have a lower moderate tolerance, you can actually still get pretty high off of this stuff. Now, what's important to note is regardless of whether it's a 2.5 or 3 milligram dose or upwards of 10, or if you take a couple of doses, the therapeutic benefits of THC are incredibly measurable, and we can look at data to back these studies. Now, although that larger amount of CBD is going to minimize some of the intoxicating effects or the overall experience of the THC, we know that the high amount of CBD is therapeutic and that the low amount of THC is also therapeutic regardless of how you're feeling. So if you can find a true full spectrum CBD product that is federally legal and is delivering a couple milligrams of THC, awesome. By all means, enjoy consuming it. One of the things you might be up against, though, is the fact that you're going to be paying a premium. And although you're not being taxed to death, you're still going to pay a good amount of money per serving to get that THC. Now, there are some other cannabinoids like CBN, cannabinol, or delta-8 THC, which are about 1/4 of the potency of THC that can, for some people, depending on tolerance, provide a little bit of an intoxicating experience, and when combined with CBD or even by themselves can actually be therapeutic as well. The main thing about all of these cannabinoids, especially delta-9 THC, is that a very small amount can therapeutically do a lot, and there's a lot of data to back it. So now let's talk about the types of full spectrum products that basically are placebo at best and just phenomenal for marketing. Well, it's basically any other full spectrum product that is not delivering several milligrams of delta-9 THC or a little extra of, say, delta-8 or CBN. When you take these potent compounds out of the equation and you're left with just CBD, that can be great if you're getting enough of it. But the majority of full spectrum products are delivering anywhere from 10 to upwards of 60 milligrams of CBD per serving. Yes, you could be getting an entourage of different cannabinoids, but what are those cannabinoids? How potent are they? Do they interact with each other in a positive way, or could they potentially interact with each other in a way that could minimize the therapeutic effect of CBD? Something to wrap your mind around would be, how did people come up with the idea that 10, 30, 40, 50, 60 milligrams of CBD is effective in the first place? Well, they basically looked at THC and they said, hey, you're THC, and we know that 2.5, 5, 10 milligrams is super effective with you, and you're CBD and you come from the same plant. So let's just say the dosing is the same. Done. Easy breezy. And that's just the way people went on about their lives looking at these two cannabinoids. What's a shame is that research all the way back into the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and as far back as the 60s have looked at CBD, and they've been able to look at the affinity or the strength of these compounds at different receptors and measure them. And when you look at the data that includes humans and a placebo, what you will find is that a lot of CBD is required for it to be effective, unless you have a little bit of THC at the same time. This is the difference of Sativex versus Epidiolex. We already covered Sativex. Now, Epidiolex is delivering anywhere from 5 to 25, and in later long-term studies, 50 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, which is hundreds, if not into the thousands of milligrams per dose. Yes, this is a purified CBD product, CBD only. But when you look at other data on CBD, anything ranging from sleep to pain to Parkinson's to neurological disorders, mood disorders, the range for effectiveness to just get started falls between 300 to 400 milligrams. So if you're consuming or looking to consume a full spectrum hemp product with less than 0.3% THC, you have to make sure that you have a couple milligrams of Delta-9 THC or a couple extra more of CBN or say Delta-8 THC included with your dose of CBD for it to be effective. This is an opinion. This is literally looking at the data. And I will say the data that is available now. This easily could change. These studies are super expensive. So the researchers who are looking at the efficacy and they're looking at the potency or the affinity, the strength of these different compounds and how they work in vitro studies, which would be in test tubes and petri dish and cell studies, and then looking at the in vivo studies of mice and rodents and other little things out there, they're quickly able to say, okay, well, we know that this works this way, and this works this way. Imagine these researchers thinking about current drugs that are available today. And someone's thinking about ibuprofen and they realize, well, based on this compound and other compounds like it, you need hundreds of milligrams for it to work. But then if you look at something like Oxy, well, you only need a tiny little bit for it to be really effective. Well, THC is to Oxy as CBD is to ibuprofen. And they take this data and then they formulate these studies around it. And then we have the hierarchy of the way these studies are put together and how relevant or how important or the strength of each study compared to another is and the way they fall into that pyramid. And of course, your placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized trials are the ones that are going to have the most clout compared to a little case study. And when you look at the data of CBD at the top of that hierarchy, it's pretty simple to say, hey, we know what's effective, just as we know what's effective with THC. What's important to mention about an effective full spectrum hemp product is that if you are getting a couple milligrams of THC, you may fail a drug test. And in fact, you should just think you will fail a drug test. So if your job is at risk for failing a drug test, then I would not recommend taking a full spectrum product of any kind, especially one that is effective in delivering those therapeutic doses of THC and CBD. And that's where CBD isolate comes in. CBD isolate is a purified form of CBD. Basically, when you look at a lab test, the only cannabinoid that you're going to see is CBD. Now, any cannabinoid can be isolated. Some of the ones you'll find with hemp include cannabigerol, CBG, cannabinol, CBN, as well as Delta-8 THC. So there are a bunch of CBD isolate products out there. The problem with a lot of them is that they are defying the research on just CBD isolate, and they're delivering the same 10 to 60 milligram dose recommendation that the full spectrum products are offering. So you're getting a isolated single compound knowing that it defies the research. Here's the deal. In order for CBD by itself to be effective, you need anywhere from 2.5 to 20 some milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So for most people, you're looking at 200 to 400 milligrams minimum, and based on the data, 300 to 400 milligrams of CBD is the required effective dose. And that's just getting started for things like sleep and moderate pain. When you get into things like seizures, you're looking at much higher doses. Okay, shameless plug. There's 100,000 milligrams of CBD isolate in this tub, okay? This is pure CBD and organic coconut oil. And right on the back, it tells you that there are 1,351 milligrams of CBD per tablespoon or 90 per milliliter. This was created to mirror the research. And that's how we formulate our products. We look at the science and we say, okay, science says to do this. There's a placebo, it's done on humans, it's not in a petri dish, cells or with a mouse, so we should probably follow the science. And that's exactly what we're doing. And right now, our 100,000 milligram product is selling for the same price that a lot of companies are selling 1,000 or 3,000 milligrams. And that's CBD isolate all the way to the full spectrum crew. In the description below, I'm gonna have a couple of links that will show you the science on effective CBD dosing. Here's the thing, next time you're presented with an option of what type of CBD product am I going to buy, don't think about marketing, don't think about what your friend told you or your buddy who just started a CBD company. Think about the science on humans that include placebos. They're the ones that are really important. So follow the science and make sure that you're taking effective therapeutic doses of CBD.